Hey, everybody, welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation. And it's a special one today because it's episode 100. But we're here with Breakthrough Innovation where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, create value, and build what's next. I'm JL Heather. Here with me is my co host, Preston Chandler. Together, we lead Centered, a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation coaching and strategy. Today's guest brings some soulful clarity, practical tools, and transformational frameworks to people and organizations hungry for deeper purpose. David Prosper, known as Prosper, is a clarity architect, leadership coach, and the author of Finding Clarity, Your Guide to Peace, Purpose, and Prosperity. He's the founder of Clarity Catalyst Solutions and the visionary behind the Clarity Cycle and Clarity Archetypes, frameworks helping high achievers around the world shift from confusion to intentional design. From coaching to technology, Prosper is building a movement to help 1 billion people live their lives by design, not default. Prosper, welcome to Breakthrough Innovation.
Thank you so much for having me, JL. And I'm excited, Preston. Thank you. And this is 100 episodes. Like,
I
this is
know.
huge. So this is going to launch. We're gonna manifest it. We're going to put it out there. Congrats on 100 episodes that are being launched. So thank you for having me.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
no
Prosper.
problem. No
We're
problem at
excited
all.
for you.
Yeah. 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 It seems weird to be on episode 100, but let's dive in. So you talk about being a clarity architect, which one, I love the title. I think that's so powerful that clarity is something you build, not something that just happens, which I like. I'm curious though, what does that role mean to you? And how does it kind of match with your lived experience and what kind of helped you shape that identity?
That's a great question. I would say, like, when I was a kid, I've always wanted to be an architect. And, like, I was fascinated by how things get designed. And then I was also fascinated about psychology. And as a kid, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an architect and I'm going to be a psychologist. But those two things are very much in a box. So later on in life, I'm like, hold on. Psychology is the study of behavior and how we interact with each other. And being an architect is someone who designs something. What if I studied how behavior is designed and created in a way that's effective for people? Could I marry the two? So that's where clarity architect comes from. And it's living a life by design. And what that means is I'm choosing to bring these things into my life versus I'm living by default in autopilot. For example, I was driving to the gym today and I see a lot of cars like following each other and they were like piled up on each other. But one could have like gotten out of the lane and gone to the exit, and they both could have got to the same destination. But it was just like, hold on. If somebody were to say, hold on, what if I stepped out? What would change? But all the times, like these individuals, they were just like in a line, and I'm like, they're living on autopilot. So we often do things because we've often seen things done the same way versus asking questions and saying, is this in alignment? Is this true for me? Is this my story or is this somebody else's story?
I love that, Prosper, and I think that you found a couple of kindred spirits that
Yeah.
we both love both the psychology portion of it and like that organizational architecting perspective of it. And we're both fascinated by how people think and how people work. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Let's go.
Well, I do think it's interesting because what you're talking about is really kind of at the root of what it means to be an empowered person,
Hmm.
right? So many of us abdicate our ability, our freedom, for lack of a better way to say it, not to be overly dramatic, by just doing what we're told. And it starts in school, it goes through college, and then that expectation of find a job, start a family, whatever it is for you, like it just feels like there's a path laid out, and all we have to do is keep taking the next step, which is interesting to me because you talk about in finding clarity, this hidden stagnation, which to me, that's kind of what that is. The stagnation is just taking the next step in the path that someone else laid out for you. And that can feel like achievement, but underneath, you can still not feel like you've accomplished anything, or at least not accomplished what you want. So I'm curious, why do so many high performers feel stuck even when they still appear successful?
Hmm. That's a loaded question. It's the public success and the private failure. And oftentimes I believe the reason why high successful or high performers are successful but they're stuck is It's oftentimes the stories that we tell ourselves and what's convenient. So there's a famous book that I love that what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah, oh,
And
yeah.
oftentimes we practice these things that got us to that level, but life is about evolution and not just going through the motion. So it's harder to evolve if I base my identity on what I did. So oftentimes high performers are just like, I've reached this level of success, but if I do something else, that's going to put me in a different cycle. And in the book that's coming out in August, I talk about the clarity cycles, and we go through 4 cycles during our lives. And it's just like summer, winter, spring, fall. Cycle 1 is the wanderer. This is the person looking around. They're in the fog. They're just like, something feels different, but I don't know what to do next. And then the next step in the cycle is the seeker. Now they're looking for questions. They're looking for answers. They're the professional or the personal development junkies. They're just like, okay, give me knowledge. I need this. And then the next step is the architect. They're the individuals who start designing, okay, I've gotten all this information. How do I build a life from alignment? And then the last person is the flow master. Now they're just in sync with everything. They're purpose driven. So oftentimes high performers are in that place is because they're unwilling to be that wanderer again. And we have to go through the cycles, what I believe.
Kind of jumping back to that beginner's mindset and
Yes.
letting go of the things you feel like you know, but maybe don't. I like that. I am curious though, you talk about that purpose. Let me see if I got this right. You start with the wonder, then you have
The seeker.
the seeker, then the architect, and from that point, you're designing your future.
Hmm.
The part that I'm probably most curious about, so it feels like step 1 is awareness, like, it's kinda that whole Alcoholics Anonymous. The first step is admitting you have a problem.
Yes.
The next step is the seeking. So I would love to hear a little bit more about how does that work? How do you know, like, what steps do you take that lead you to the purpose that becomes the center of the architecting that happens in the next step?
Is asking questions like you're doing right now. I believe school has conditioned us to get the right answers versus ask the right questions.
Absolutely.
And when we're programmed to say, okay, I don't have the answer, therefore I don't know. But the greatest invention happened because we're just like, hold on, what if we take a piece of metal and fly it through the sky? How would that work? Because there was a time that we were just on a horse and a buggy and we're just like, we're going to get from California to New York in 10 days. But it's asking those questions of, okay, where am I in my life? How is it feeling? Do I feel pulled to the things that I'm doing, or am I being pushed in the things that I'm doing? Am I alive in this conversation, or do I feel deprived in this conversation? It's doing self reflection. And then the next step is, where do I want to go? Who do I want to serve? What am I good at? And once we start getting those answers, then we take them, and I like Excel sheets. We take all those gifts and talents and things that we like, and we're like, okay, so what am I good at? Where am I going? Who am I? Who do I want to serve? And what lifestyle do I want to live? And is it a lifestyle that it brings the greatest joy, and I can serve others, or is it a lifestyle that I'm just going through the motions of things? So the seeker has to start asking questions in order to build. It's just like an architect or a consultant. They do the questions, or a doctor. They ask all the questions before they give a diagnostics or they prescribe something. So we have to ask the same questions.
I like that.
Along that process, along this cycle that you're describing, what are some of the common mistakes that people might make? What are some of the myths that we have about that cycle?
The biggest mistakes is asking the wrong questions. And then the biggest myth is that you have to have it all figured out. So I'm going to break that down. Asking the wrong question. One of my clients, she said, today, like, what if today's a bad day? What if, like, and I was like, that's lovingly in the most respectful way. That's a dumb question. Um, she was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you're setting yourself up for that outcome, so therefore, like, that question positions you to look for that thing, whatever we focus on, energy typically flows to. So asking the right questions. So one of the things when I was struggling in my first marriage and we had challenges, and my spouse at the time, she would, say certain things and it would trigger me emotionally, and I would get upset. And then I started praying and I was like, God, why is this happening to me? Why me? And then he said, you're asking the wrong questions. Instead, you should be asking, what is this trying to teach me? So if we ask the right questions, we get answers that leads us into a space. And then now the myth busters. The biggest myth is that we have to have it all figured out when we think about clarity. But clarity is just the next right step. And then it's the next right step. And then it becomes compound clarity, just like it becomes compound failure. It's one bad decision after a time become failure. And it's one good decision over time become success.
I like that a lot. I think that aligns really well with a lot of what we talk about when it comes to innovation. Define how you want to show up, like what is the mindset, what is the perspective you're going to hold, and then ask really solid, open ended questions. We tend to talk about it, focus on understanding the problem, not the solution. And when you do that, it leads you into some good places. I do want to shift just a little bit because I know you're not just coaching, and we've talked a lot about the coaching cycle here. You've actually created a whole ecosystem here between the book, the business, some tech enabled clarity assessments. I'm curious, where are you still being challenged? Like, is it scalable tools? What are the things you're still figuring out? Like, what help do you need?
Mm. As an entrepreneur, like one of the biggest challenges is cutting out the fat. Because
Mm,
when we think about, we want to have like the buffet, we want everything because we can serve everyone. So the process that I'm going through and I'm being challenged by is getting more fine tuned in what needs to be in the version one and what can be in version two versus having everything in
mm.
version one. So it's building in phases versus building holistically. So that's where I'm being challenged the most right now.
One of one of my favorite pieces of agile is there's a one of the principles that says simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done.
Mm,
And I think that that is what
like
you're
that.
describing is maximize all the stuff that you can just say no to so that you can focus on whatever is the very most essential. And that is tough because it feels like you're letting go of great things and you are letting go of great things so that you can hold on to greater things.
Yeah, another way to look at it is signal to noise, right? What is the signal? What is the noise? Because you got to cut out all the noise and really focus on the signal you're sending or that you're trying to send. So I love that that's the challenge. I think that that shows an amazing amount of self awareness in that entrepreneurial journey. And that's like you said in just the ability to architect clarity. Awareness is that first step, right? So to some extent, you're following your own journey, and I love it.
Let's
Now,
go.
when we talk about this, and this is kind of our wrap up question here, how can we redesign success as a culture so clarity and fulfillment are non negotiable, not afterthoughts?
I would say and in the upcoming book, I talk about the C5 model. And in the C5 model, in order to redesign what it looks like as a culture is to focus on number one, capacity, right? This is the ability to retain and sustain the things that we have. So are we growing or are we pouring out cups that can sustain us? Are we pouring out in spaces that can sustain us? So capacity is the number one thing in order to start redesigning that. Number two is competency. This is the skill set to get the job done. Number three is courage. Are we taking action of faith? And courage is not the absence of faith, but it's not the absence of fear, but the presence of faith. And number four is connection. These are the tools, the people that moves us forward in that journey. And number five is curiosity. So it's asking great questions. So if we focus on capacity, competency, courage, connection, and curiosity, we'll start redesigning a life that is in alignment versus a life by default.
I like that a lot. You called it the
Very
five
insightful.
C model?
C5, C5.
C5. There we go. I had it backwards. The C5. All right. I love it. So now, if people have questions about the C5 model, your book, your services, what's the best way for them to get in connection with you?
The internet. I'm kidding. You can reach me at davidbprosper.com, and I'm always on Instagram. That's where I live. And my Instagram handle is David B. Prosper. So you put those two in the search engine, you'll find me. And I would love to connect with you. But more importantly, I would love to have a conversation with you and see if I can walk alongside of you to help you in this journey called clarity.
I love it. I love it. And I think as we're wrapping up, so first of all, David or Prosper, thank you so much for your time. And for everyone else that's here, I really want to encourage you in the comments. We'd love to hear, what are your struggles with clarity? Where do you feel like you don't have it? And what stage are you in? Are you wondering? Are you archetyping, or are you somewhere in between? Right? Architecting might be the better word. We'd love to hear from you. If you know anyone who's struggling with clarity, introduce them to Prosper through this video and share the wealth. And then before you leave, leave us a comment, leave us a rating, just so we know how we did. David, thank you again so much. This has been fantastic. Everyone else, thank you as well. And we'll see you all next time on Breakthrough Innovation for episode 101.
Thank you.
Thanks, Prosper.
Thank you.